Hey guys, Jose here. I bet you're wondering how I actually listen to episodes of Contentment Creation myself. Well, the great thing is that this podcast, as well as many other podcasts and your favorite songs, they're all available on Amazon Music. Amazon Music houses over 60 million of your favorite songs to stream across any device of your choice, be it your computer, mobile phone, any voice-enabled speakers, and so much more. And the best part is that all my listeners can have access to their free at least 30-day trial of Amazon Music today just by going to getamazonmusic.com/Jose Can You See. That is getamazonmusic.com/JOSECANUC, and you too can start streaming away today for your favorite songs and podcasts just like this one. Thank you so much to Amazon for bringing us this program today. This episode of Contentment Creation is brought to you by Grinding Coffee Company. Grinding Coffee is a Black LGBTQIA+ owned online coffee shop dedicated to fueling gamers and creators alike with their specialty coffees. They're based out of Georgia, ship nationwide in the United States, and a portion of each purchase benefits the Coffee Trust, making donations to the farmers where their coffee is ethically sourced and roasted to order. To try Grinding Coffee today, head over to grindingcoffee.co and use code Jose for 10% off your purchase of some fabulously gay coffee. That is code JOSE at grindingcoffee.co. All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Contentment Creation. Jose Gonzalez here, coming to you live from beautiful, scenic Dash's Market-Side Cafe in Buffalo, New York. Yes, we're going grocery shopping, but first we have to take a second to stop and think about what really brought us here today. And what brought me here today was my very special guest, a good friend of mine, a host, a producer, a writer, a multimedia journalist in the world of professional wrestling, and also just a badass, Ella J.
What's up, Jose? I'm so happy to be here.
I know. It just feels like the very first time, you know.
It really does.
Yes. For those that aren't seeing the blooper reel, this is probably the third or fourth take for many different technical difficulties, but it wasn't the technology that was difficult. It was me. I'm going to take that L. I'm going to work on it.
I've been there, though, and done that, and still do that, though, so don't feel so bad.
I will say we didn't get into, like, the meat and potatoes of everything we talked about, so there's still plenty that's going to be nice and fresh.
True.
But, I mean, how have you been coming back from Nashville not too long ago?
I mean, as you can tell, my voice is still not 100%. It's been 3 weeks since Nashville, but we're slowly getting there. I've pumped out some interviews that I did there and content there, so that was a lot of fun. Don't know when I'm going to travel again officially for just media work. Maybe BFG in Albany, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, well, one, thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk all things content related with us. But the big thing that I want to do is always try to get to know the person behind the content that they create. Obviously, you've done so much in pro wrestling, but I still feel like there's so much like untapped about Ella J the person. So it'd be kind of cool to get a little backstory on you, because I know from what we have discussed before is that even like going so back to when you were in college, you weren't a communications or a journalism major. You were actually a psychology major.
Yeah, so I majored in psychology, minored in creative writing, but ironically, I should have taken this as a hint. A lot of my free electives, actually all of the free electives I chose myself, were all communications or journalism classes. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved psychology. That was something I literally spoke into existence since I was in middle school, 11 or 12 years old, in my little diary. And I don't regret my college years. I had a lot of fun, but I should have taken the classes I chose to do myself that really didn't count towards my degree. I should have taken that as a sign, I think. But I kind of was enrolled to go into grad school then after graduating with my bachelor's in psych at UB for rehabilitation counseling. And then I was like, that's more debt, first of all, because you get less financial aid when you go into a master's program, and I don't need my loans to double in 2 years.
At least not anytime soon without forgiveness.
So I unenrolled from grad school just to take like maybe a semester or a year break while also working my same shoot job. I still am right now to, keep up finances. And then in the meantime, I was like, well, I got free time now. I'm not going to school. I'm just working. And so I started my own podcast after being a wrestling fan for a decade at that point. I had been watching my good friend Samira killing it for about a year at that point. She had done a few interviews and writing and media work in professional wrestling. And of course, I looked up to people like Chris Van Fleet and Alicia Toot, who are very prominent in professional wrestling and outside of it too. I mean, as a journalist, as a host, as interviewers, etc. And so I was really I love talking about professional wrestling. I was a closeted fan for a while. I always expressed it like a lot of my best friends, like yourself, we met through wrestling.
Yeah.
And so I really only found online to be my outlet to talk about wrestling, not really in real life. And so I kind of felt closeted, but it was something I was really passionate about. So it kind of just started out as a hobby, and obviously it's evolved since then.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely carved yourself a very big piece into the world that we call women's wrestling coverage. So there's definitely a huge place for people like you, people like a Samira, that are just working so hard, really trying to get to know these performers and get their stories out there, because there's just not that kind of exposure. And you guys are providing such an important outlet, especially with pro wrestling. There's so much more to be done for equality, even to this day. Yes, we're seeing a lot of positive changes, especially in the last 6 years, but there's always going to be more to do. So
yeah, and that's not something, again, I came in intending per se. I came in with the objective that I was going to share the female perspective on pro wrestling, whether that was me or with hosts. But it kind of has since evolved then. I mean, it's still the female perspective with women's wrestling, but like I said, this kind of started out as a hobby, but now women's wrestling has kind of become my brand. And I didn't deem myself this, but somebody told me I was the queen of women's wrestling or something like that, or they were the first person I thought of when talking about women in wrestling or women's wrestling. So I'll take it. I'll gladly take it. Like I said, it's progressed into starting out as a hobby and just me talking about sharing the female perspective on wrestling, because I felt I was so scrutinized as a female watching it that I closeted myself. So it's progressed since then, and now, yeah, I guess women's wrestling is my brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an important brand too. I feel like you've definitely been able to make a name for yourself with that, and just kind of seeing the things that you're continuing to do even now to further elevate your brand and really try to have more experiences to not only better yourself, but just to better the industry. I feel like there's so much that I'm excited for you to do. But before we get into a lot of the wrestling stuff, I still want to know, what was it that originally got you into the idea of becoming a content creator, especially with podcasting and everything too? It just feels like from our generation, especially this on the cusp of being a millennial and Gen Z, just really seeing how the early stages of YouTube and just online content turn into the conglomerate that it is today, where it's a very feasible and also just a very prominent career.
Yeah, well, like I said, in wrestling, obviously, Samira, Chris Van Fleet, Alicia Toot were killing it on their platforms with YouTube and social media presence. But I had been watching YouTube and kind of the digital aspect for a decade now, since really 2012 was when I first started watching YouTube prominently. And now there's been people where I started watching them 10 years ago, and now they also have podcasts, so they're doing digital media work, like Katie Bellotti, for example. I've literally been watching since 2012. She's only a year older than me. I've been watching her since she was a sophomore in high school, and now she has her own podcast, Thick and Thin. She has her own marketing freelance job. She also does graphic design work. She also has a portfolio of making tattoo art for people. She also is kind of similar to me, or at least I'm trying to get there, where she used to work a 9-to-5 corporate job in L'Oreal, but she quit that and invested in herself so she could pursue her real passions, which is her work in marketing and graphic design, and doing her podcast Thick and Thin and all of that, and really doing a lot of digital media work. And she's multifaceted. That's just 4 things. I'm sure she does a lot more too as well. She also hosts another podcast too. I think it's called Made in Manhattan or something like that. And she travels for work too, and she has a lot of brand deals and stuff like that. I know it's more lifestyle and makeup and the beauty aspect of it, but it's still that's something that I'm trying to attain myself. Is I'm still working a shoot job, as we call it.
Yeah.
But seeing people like her be able to kind of make her freelance work, her digital platform work full time is really inspiring to me. And like I've seen her progress throughout this last 10 years. And like there's other people that I've been watching on YouTube, like an Alicia Marie or like a Kenzie Elizabeth, who now are killing it outside. And granted, it's outside of wrestling, but I feel like that was really, I've been watching these people for like a good 8, 9, 10 years. And to see them all grow up kind of in the same age range as us, like Zillennials, is really, really inspiring.
No, and I think like a lot of that too, like you can have inspiration from fields outside of whatever your primary focus is, but also still have something to apply to it. Like I know for me, like the person that I thought of immediately of just like starting out like very humble beginnings on YouTube and just turning into like an empire, a global phenomenon was Rosanna Pansino. So like seeing like small apartment that she was in doing Nerdy Nummies like once here and there, but also like hustling, like trying to do like her odd gigs, like in LA, like as an actor, as an extra. Like she's also a classically trained opera singer, who would have thought. But like seeing how far she's come in a decade to like being a household name, whether she be on like spin-off series that she's done for HBO, her cookbooks, her baking line with Wilton, like just really becoming a phenomenon of sorts, all just from starting in front of a camera and uploading it online, which it's inspiring, but it's also kind of scary as hell because you never know where this journey's going to take you. So just having to be open for anything that could come its way.
Yeah, and granted, they started like when they were in their teens and stuff, but like I literally grew up watching them. Like a lot of the stuff that I watch nowadays, obviously they're still wrestling, but I still watch a lot of that same content that I have been watching since I was a teenager, like a Katie Bellotti, or like I said, there's Alicia Marie and Remy Cruz who host the Pretty Basic podcast, and they're both very, very prominent in the world of YouTube and LA and media. I mean, Alicia has her own clothing brand. I mean, Remy, they also have their own podcasts and their own channels, and they do a lot of work in LA and influencing too, which obviously I don't really consider myself an influencer, but it's still kind of the same platform and kind of similar work.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just crazy to see like that it truly has become not only viable but just attainable in some retrospect. So it really makes you think. So obviously you've had your inspirations, you've seen people go on their journeys into becoming like some of the bigger creators that we see today. As far as like when you're done with work and you just need something to kick back and relax, is there something that you gravitate to for like a comfort watch?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously wrestling, I watch a lot of Chris Van Vliet's stuff because truly like he has a lot of great guests outside of professional wrestling as well, and like I will literally go out of my way to watch like just people interviewing CVV, so I feel like I know his as Alicia too would say, it's professional stalking. Like I literally could feel like I could name off his whole story like myself,
and he was also super cool to talk to in Dallas about that too.
Like I feel like I could literally name off his whole story because I've listened to it at least 15 to 20 episodes of him being interviewed, but he has a lot of cool insight and a lot of cool experience in entertainment and professional wrestling and beyond too.
And also an Emmy Award winner for like his news coverage.
I think he has like
too.
4 Emmys.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Renee Paquette too. I finally got to meet her in person in Nashville. I interviewed her last year. That was a surreal experience. But outside of that, like I said, I listened to Thick and Thin by Katie Bellotti and then Pretty Basic by Alicia and Remy, which is, I mean, it's kind of a mix of like career stuff in LA, beauty, lifestyle, relationships, like life stuff. Kenzie Elizabeth is also one that I love listening to. She's literally my age. I've been watching her for at least 8 or 9 years now, and she has her podcast called I Love You So Much, which again is kind of like along the same lines with it. I mean, it's a big spectrum. It's not just one niche where like a lot of my stuff is. It's very broad. There's like relationships, there's life advice. She's also another girl in her 20s. She's literally the same age as me, born in 1997. So and she's accomplished so much after growing up on the internet for like 8-9 years now. She's great on YouTube too. I mean, I love Smosh. Still watch them to this day.
Yes,
Smosh Games was literally just watching them yesterday. The Shane Top is Dead video, even though it was from a couple months ago, I literally scroll and watch that. And I watch a lot of games. Like I still watch like the Among Us and Saga. I watch a lot of those influencers and gamers still. Town of Salem though is another game I'm trying to get my friends to play.
I have not played Town of Salem in like 4 years.
I love it. You don't understand. Like I literally play that by myself.
Like I remember playing it with like other people on Twitch and just like because that was before the Among Us craze happened. It was just like well,
they took a lot of the Town of Salem stuff and implemented it into Among
Yeah,
Us.
like same with like people who were doing like Fortnite creative
Yeah.
stuff and they were playing Werewolf, and it's
Yeah.
like all kind of in that
Yeah.
same niche. So
Yeah, so I still watch like Sekuno and Toast and Valkyrie and
Yeah.
like Chilled and all of that. I love watching that. ASMR is also when I'm having a lot of anxiety, is the thing that like calms me. I know that's not everybody's thing, but honestly, like I'm really into ASMR too as well. And then reality TV. We won't talk about this year's Big Brother cast, but
Yeah.
Survivor is coming up next month. I started watching it the same year I watched professional wrestling, and Wednesday nights belong to Survivor.
yeah, I remember back in the day was Thursday nights. Like
Yeah.
that's how long I've been
Yeah.
watching Survivor
Yeah.
with my family. Like that's
Yeah.
like the one show. It's just like, okay, we all kind of stop what we're doing, we'll watch it along. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think even like my sister, like her thing during COVID was like she's already seen every season, but like going rapid fire
Yeah.
back to back to back across every different platform to get every episode, and it's just like, damn, they've done so many things over 20 years, over 40 something seasons, just like, and it's still fresh.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Like, you don't understand, like, Wednesday nights, like, AEW, I'm sorry, but, like, Wednesday nights have been Survivor nights for me for 13 years now. And, like, it's cool that we've seen professional wrestling, like, intertwined with it.
Yeah,
Like,
we
John
totally
Morrison, we got to see Ashley Bassaro. And obviously now, like, it's cool to see worlds collide. Like I was mentioning, I like watching a lot of games or like party games. Like I used to watch a channel called JK Party. They disbanded in like early 2020. But Gina Darling used to be on there a lot, who's very well known in like the influencer and like gaming. But she just did a thing with Xavier Woods, and I was like, you go,
Yeah,
Gina.
because I think she co-hosts
You go,
Arena for
Gina.
G4 now,
Yeah,
which is awesome.
it's so cool to see people that you've like grown up watching like somehow intertwined with wrestling.
Also, this is going to be an interesting question. For Survivor, do you prefer the old 39-day format, or do you like the 26, 28-day thing they've been doing?
Like, so they've only been doing the 26-day format for the last 2 seasons. So I don't know. I like the traditional 39 days, but obviously 26 makes it a lot more fast-paced and, like, cutthroat. So I feel like I need a few more seasons to be able to truly tell, but I was so happy that we got two back-to-back female winners, because we had not gotten a female winner in, like, 8 seasons.
Yeah, I think one was Canadian, and then we also had a black woman winning as well, too, which is awesome.
Erica and Marianne. I was so happy for
Oh
them.
my god, I was so happy for
Yeah.
Marianne.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think my main thing's just like, I don't know if it's like they were trying to pack so much in, like obviously COVID's still a very big
Yeah.
thing, especially traveling. Like they're thinking, okay, we'll have a smaller shoot, maybe like smaller cast, just try to crank out 2 seasons back to back. Do you think they might revert back to 39 days?
Well, they
or-
did that before, where they would shoot one season like March to May, and then they would shoot the other season either late May or early June to the end of July. So
Oh, wow.
either way, they would do back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot more twists nowadays too, and advantages. Sometimes it takes away from it, but I'm excited for season 43 to come out.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to it. And I mean, we did kind of allude to it going with like the things that you're doing now, and obviously like even on a Survivor tangent, but yeah, I mean, you've been in wrestling like as a fan, especially for what, like the last 14, 15 years?
13 next week will be my 13-year wrestling anniversary.
Oh wow. Like, do you remember like where you were and like what it was, like your first memory of being a wrestling
Yes,
fan?
yeah. So it was Friday Night SmackDown on My TV Buffalo, Cable Channel 8. It was Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk. I believe it was the main event that night. It was loser leaves town in a steel cage. I think it was steel cage or Hell in a Cell or something like that.
Yeah.
But I just remember being so like captivated by the charismatic Enigma for some reason, and like feeling really emotional that he was like giving this speech saying goodbye. But like that match was just like amazing, and then I kept watching every single week, and then like later on I got to see my first women's storyline, which I don't really like to look back on. That being the whole Piggy James storyline with Mickie James, but truly I'm very grateful for that, because one, there would be no Ella J without Mickie James, but that was especially during a time where I was like 11 turning 12, very awkward in middle school, was not popular, had a lot of insecurities, and still kind of do, but I felt like I really empathized with Mickie during that time. Was that storyline tastefully done? No, but I really related to Mickie with the body insecurities and like feeling like the bullying and stuff like that, and so I feel like I saw myself in her, and that's what really hooked me, at least onto women's wrestling, was seeing her and the whole like cool storyline, and so I empathized with that, and I didn't realize that it was kayfabe, that it wasn't real. So I was like, you go, Mickie, when she won at the Royal Rumble, then won the championship and beat Michelle. I was like, hell yeah, you go, you know. I was rooting for her, and also like at that time, like was like DX's last run. They made me laugh. They gave me an escape. Like John Morrison was also another one of my early favorites. Like it really just gave me an escape at that time where it was like a really dark place, you know, especially during middle school where you're like hitting puberty and all of this, and I didn't have a lot of friends. I was not popular growing up, and so it gave me a lot of an escape. And it had always been an athletic person, so I think I appreciated the combination of like the entertainment and aspect, but also like the athleticism too.
Yeah, no, I could relate to that too, because I remember like when I started watching, it was a little bit before you did. So it's actually like around this time in 2005 I started watching. So what, 17 years ago, Jesus. And like I always say, like the first thing I remember watching, it was like a random episode of Raw, because like I think I've seen like bits of wrestling like growing up. Like I think at one point like my grandpa would watch like SmackDown all the time back on UPN, and like I think there's like one time where like Big Show like choke slammed Kurt Angle off a balcony. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna watch that anytime soon, but like I'm stumbling across, I think it was like a random Raw in 2005. Ashley had just won the Divas Surge, and like Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle were doing like the initiation thing. They're like, oh no, you're not facing one of us, but you're facing like her, and like Victoria comes out. But I think it was interesting because like I just started like at a new school at that time too, so like I knew what it was like to be brand new, like not knowing anything about the world that I'm in, but then also just like having to be like, okay, put on a brave face and go at it. So like vividly remembering that, and just like seeing like the Widow's Peak for the first time, just like, what did she just do to her? I'm like, okay, I could keep watching this. I like this, but it's also kind of crazy, just like, damn, like you said, like there would be no like LJ without Mickie James. I could probably say it probably wouldn't be me without Victoria
or Jeff Hardy. There would be no, like if it wasn't for like the initial thing with Jeff Hardy and Punk, like I don't think I would have continued watching. And I didn't know, I would see commercials for Raw like with John Cena and Sheamus, but it was like I what channel is this? Like it said it was on USA. I didn't know like what channel USA was on, but I got to see them. My first live event was later that year, at my first live event was that Christmas, is like 2 days after Christmas, the holiday tour, where it was, I think it was mainly the Raw stars, where I didn't really know any of them, but my first memory, one of my first memories there, like at 12 years old, seeing Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes get pantsed by DX and Kofi Kingston. It was my first live event. I get to see their bare butt cheeks. It was so funny. I'll never forget that.
I mean, you don't see that nowadays.
Wrestling, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. So I mean,
It could.
I mean, and obviously with what you're doing now, especially with like GAW TV and like the GAW cast, like, have you ever got a chance to like really tell like Mickie
Yes.
what your first?
Yes, I have told her, like, I mean, the first time I met her, I did not, well, first of all, like, I literally didn't get to meet her until 2017. Like, I had been waiting for my opportunity. Yes, like, I did tell her, and I, like, almost, I cried after. I went to the bathroom and cried after meeting her for the first time. I've gotten to tell her that. Like, I've told her, like, we've had phone calls before. Like, I've had 3-hour, like, long phone calls with her, and we somehow brought it up. I've told her multiple times, or, like, I would write out notes, because I would be too afraid to say it. So, yeah, she's very aware. It's not a time that we, like, look on fondly, and she said this before, like it wasn't her fondest year, but also at the same time, like, I'm grateful for it too. And like me and her have talked about, like, you never know, like, who could be inspired by that, or who that story could touch. Like we said, it wasn't tastefully done, and it was like a dark time for her personally that they translated over to on screen, but there would be no me. Like, might not be here today if it wasn't for her and that storyline hooking me on her.
Yeah, and then kind of like fast forward to, obviously we did just kind of go to it now, like going from like a place of being a fan to now being like a colleague and a friend. Like, did you ever think like in a million years that you could say that you got to work alongside one of your idols?
No, like, it took me, like I said, 8 years to meet her. I never thought I would ever get to finally meet her. We had, like, interacted on social media before, but I was like, I am never gonna meet this woman. It's been, like, 8 years. And then that finally happened. Then the chances kept building there. Like, I saw her the next year in 2018 for, like, WWE, and then at downtown at the Falls for her music stuff. And then I saw her again in 2019 for WWE and that stuff. So, like, literally the years leading up, like, it just kind of was, like, a catalyst, I think, meeting her. And then now going from, like, fan to friend is still, like, still surreal, still very weird, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely surreal, but like also kind of natural in a weird
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Like,
no, it was definitely naturally, like, I would just be there to support her. Like, I like the first time I met her wasn't even wrestling wise. I met her through her music. She was getting inducted into the Native American Music Awards Hall of Fame, like in Niagara Falls. I was like, I am going. And then I finally got to my dad. I don't think I've told this before, but like we were waiting for her out. She's I mean, she'll say this. She's like late to everything. I love
I've
her.
seen this firsthand.
I love her. But I was like, she's supposed to be here on this red carpet, like outside of the thing, and I'm like waiting with my dad, and then I wasn't looking. I was like still like nervous, and my dad saw her. And he's like, "Isn't that Mickie?" I'm like, "Dad, God bless you." So if it wasn't for my dad, I almost didn't even meet her that night.
so you pulled a Jomo back
Yes.
then too? Like,
Yes.
Literally the same thing that happened at WrestleCon,
Yes.
where like he finally shows up.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. So if it wasn't for my dad seeing her, and then I went up to her, and then I almost cried. I held off till after that I ran to the bathroom and cried.
I mean, that's a good sign. I mean,
Yeah.
you cry for the big ones.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, you have to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, you've done so much, like, in a producer role with Godcast, like, getting to know, like, a lot of the girls that have been on and everything, but we've also kind of danced around the very beginnings of a wrestling gal, but I would also love to know where the writing avenue came from for you in pro wrestling, because you've been affiliated with quite a few different sites and different publications already so far in the last 3 years. So where did you start to want to transition from talking about it over the air to just getting your words together in a written fashion?
Well, I mean, I kind of did writing, like, I would write my whole life to, like, creative writing. Like, that was my minor. I was passionate about that. Like I said, I really think a lot of this started off with Mickie presenting me with the opportunity to be affiliated with GOT.TV. And so the ducks all kind of fell in a row after that, obviously, with SC Scoops bringing me on for, like, women's wrestling work in a show and, like, doing correspondence for them. But then I want to say like early May of 2021, I get an email, and again, full circle moments, from Bill Pritchard of WrestleZone. And so he had seen all the work that I had done in women's wrestling for like SC Scoops and my affiliation with GOT.TV and my own podcast. And so they were looking for like a women's wrestling column, like a weekly column to kind of be like a wrap up of news and interviews and all the latest in women's wrestling throughout that week. And they saw that, I mean, I was pretty knowledgeable on it. And so he presented me with an opportunity. We hopped on a phone call, on a Zoom call, I should say, and kind of the rest is history. So now I have women's wrestling wrap up on WrestleZone. And I, like I said, full circle moment, WrestleZone was the first site that I like literally like watched and tuned into every day for news. And I would even write in results from the Buffalo shows into WrestleZone. Like I used to watch Chair Shot Reality and all of that stuff. I used to write in the live results from WrestleZone. So there is still articles out there from like 2013, 2014, 2015.
Oh, wow.
From when I sent in news, because they say like sent in by Ella, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I did that before with like PW Mania.
So there's
back
like
in the
4
day, yeah.
articles out there before like they got the results from me. So I was on WrestleZone technically before I was even like employed by WrestleZone.
You know, before she was Ella J, she
Yeah.
was Ella Redacted.
Yeah,
You know.
pretty much.
Got to keep her some anonymity.
Yeah.
You know.
So like that was like a full circle moment. I was like, oh my God, like the ducks just kind of all fell in a row and like all the dominoes kept falling. And then so I would write like women's wrestling. I would write the column for them. I would also write certain articles for SC Scoops too, like related like to like my interview with Anna J or follow-ups with interviews I did. I also did a piece on why Charlotte Flair versus Mickie James needs to happen.
Still needs to happen.
Oh, I know. I'm probably going to write a follow-up on that, by the way. But yeah, now also, I mean, WrestleZone now, I'm actually writing stuff outside of women's wrestling too, and so they've been very gracious with me in seeing that I want to make this media thing full-time, and so now they offered me earlier a couple months ago to become like more of a regular writer. So I'll be writing about 2 to 3 days a week, like that I'm not at my shoot job, or even just in the mornings I'll work a writing shift and then go to my shoot job. So they've been very flexible with my availability and bringing me on, and they had an opening and presented me with it, and they've been Bill, thank God, shout out to Bill Pritchard. Like, honestly, he's been so great to me and understands, like, the dream that I'm trying to achieve and has really gone out of his way for me. And, like, it's been really cool as somebody who doesn't have a formal degree in journalism, or like I said, I have a minor in creative writing, but I don't have a formal degree in it. So it's kind of, luckily he gave me a crash course of SEO and like WordPress and like all this stuff, and I've gotten to naturally learn it over the last year, which is kind of like the same thing with the wrestling. I kind of taught all the stuff myself, like the equipment, the editing, the recording. I like taught all of that myself because I don't have a formal degree in this, but I've been very lucky to be surrounded by a lot of people who believe in me and have taken chances on me too.
No, that's the way to go. I mean, especially like seeing all the different opportunities they've gotten to do, even with WrestleZone. Like, did you have any writing influences from like columns that you would read, or like were you so like all encompassed with like all forms of wrestling content, just kind of like, okay, I know like what I'm taking in, but I want to be able to present that in a way that just works for me?
So I'm gonna be honest, I don't have like a particular like person or influence like that, like outside of wrestling. I just read a lot of poetry now. I mean, I used to read a lot of books growing up and like write a lot of it, but I don't read a lot of books now, to be honest, or like I read a lot of poetry, but honestly I think it was just more like the format of stuff that I was learning, like the algorithm of stuff, like what the structure of their articles look like, and that's really what I paid attention to more so than like a person's writing style. I can't say that I really have somebody that sticks out to me, but I think a lot of it was just reading their articles for years and like learning the format maybe unconsciously and like implementing it into my own work. And obviously luckily Bill is like, he'll answer any question that I have, and same with Colin, who's also huge with WrestleZone. So they've definitely helped me along the way. I kind of just got thrown in, and like also luckily they kind of gave me the breakdown of everything, because I was like, I had so many questions. I was like, I don't want to screw this up. Like, I'm still learning today.
Yeah, no, that is great. And then, I mean, you've done a lot in the last couple of years, especially with writing. I mean, know that you've even got to do, last year you were on the PWI Women's 150 committee. So how was it going through that experience and just kind of really getting to give a light to a lot of, especially the independent wrestlers that might not always get the same opportunities in a publication like that? Yeah,
so like I said, I had only been doing this just at 2 years. Like, I think the day was like July 15th. I think it was July 15th or July 17th, like literally like almost on the exact day that I started my podcast, that I started doing this. I got a phone call from Kristen. Shout out to Kristen. Saying that first they wanted me to like write a piece for them, but then like a couple weeks later they're like, so do you want to be like on the PWI Women's 150 list, kind of as the independent wrestling women's expert? Which again, independent wrestling was not something that I watched or was really invested in until I literally right before I started my podcast. I did not start watching until June of 2019, like with Pro Wrestling Eve running a counter to Super Showdown, because I was not watching that Saudi show straight up. And so I started watching Super Showdown that they did, which was like a lot of the independent wrestlers, like Britt Baker was on it, Jamie Hayter was on it, Jeddah, there's a lot of big UK stars on there. But since then, I was like, wow, there's a lot of cool, like, independent wrestling women's stars that I also have had on my podcast, too, so, from, like, all around the world. And so I was kind of brought on to the PWI last year, their Women's 150 list, as the indie expert. And so that was so cool that I got to bring, I wouldn't say expertise, but my knowledge of a lot of the indies and advocate for a lot of the spots. Like, this is not breaking news, but like Masha Slamovich and like a Roxy were two that really stood out to me that year.
And you see where they are now?
And a Giselle Shaw. Like, those are definitely three that I pushed for. And I would say a Sky Blue that I really pushed for last year, because, I mean, Giselle Shaw really last year was the face of the UK. Like, she was Progress Women's Champion. She was the Rev Pro Undisputed British Women's Champion at one point. She really was like the face of the UK scene. I was like, she should absolutely be in the top 20. You know, she, especially for the UK that wasn't having like major shows, you would see the same faces that the television shows. They weren't really having the untelevised shows, and so she deserved that. Masha Slamovich again was one who went from Japan, came back to the U.S., to Texas, took over New Jersey. She was taking over the East Coast, the West Coast, the South, literally everywhere. I was like, this girl, like, and then she just got signed, like, to Impact Wrestling, like, at the end of the period, the evaluation period. Roxy also now, Roxanne Perez was one who was, like, huge in Texas. She held, like, 4 championships at once. She was killing it. She wrestled for the Knockouts Championship against Deonna Purrazzo.
I mean, she won the Ring of Honor Women's World Title Tournament as well.
Yes, she did. And so I definitely pushed for those three, and like a Sky Blue had an incredible year, and so that was a cool but also daunting experience.
Yeah.
And luckily we kind of had experts in each field. Like we had a Joshi expert, we had the main. I feel like we all know like the mainstream stuff.
Yeah, we all do.
But
so.
like to be brought on like as the indie expert per se was really validating, because like independent women's wrestling, I talked to so many of them on my own podcast, and from around the world, from Australia, the UK, Canada, the US, especially Europe. I think it was really validating that like my voice actually does somewhat matter.
No, and then on top of that, you mentioned that, and then you think about like all four of those women that you mentioned are in the top 3 televised promotions in the country right now. You have 2 that are in Impact Wrestling. You have 1 that's in AEW. You have 1 that's in WWE. So like, definitely shows like you were right with your eye, because you can already kind of get a gauge for like who's set for greatness. It's a matter of who gets the chance for it.
Yeah.
So definitely being a big advocate for that is incredible.
And then getting to write the Empower article. That wasn't always the plan. It was always the plan to write like something for that issue for me, but I was going to Empower, and it kind of blossomed into that because that was such a monumental thing for the NWA. And then luckily enough, Mickie, Chelsea, and Deanna all gave me good quotes, and I was there firsthand to see it. So it just kind of felt naturally right that they were like, "Hey, do you want to write this about Empower?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I mean that's a great transition into NWA Empower. Oh my God, Empower. A little tongue-tied today. So I mean, take us back to that weekend last year in St. Louis, actually. So like that whole weekend is the anniversary weekend. NWA has their first all-women's pay-per-view, and they had some names on that show.
Yeah, it's a year ago next week at the time of recording this, or a year ago this week actually.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy. Like that whole experience was insane. Originally I was just planning on going down there, hang out. Mickie was like, "You should come down." I was like, "Okay." And then obviously we ended up getting media work through them, and like getting to do interviews, but also being there for the first ever women's like wrestling show, the all women's wrestling show.
Getting to be an
extra. Yes. We were the paparazzi in Melina's entrance beside our good friend Dia Shin, Samira, and our good friend Will from Will Pro Travels. That also happened though, like because we had built those connections with women's wrestling, with Gail Kim and with Mickie James, and then and Melina, of course, too. And then that happened. I feel like it's really validating. Like people are like paying attention to like not just my work, but like DS is also huge in women's wrestling too. Absolutely. Like Ring the Bell, absolutely. That kind of just all came together beautifully, and like women's wrestling matters, and that like I can't explain it. Like just being there with the lights twinkling and like loving all the women that were on the card, it was just like a magical feeling in the atmosphere that I don't feel like you can explain unless you were there. And then to like just that whole weekend was just super magical. That was also the first time I had traveled in 10 years. So it was a bit daunting, but that was my first time doing in-person media work. So that was also an experience that I got to do. Shout out to Bianca Corelli, now Ariana Grace, for being my roommate for one of the nights and being my first ever in-person interview. That was also an experience of going off the cuff and not structuring everything like I do for all my virtual interviews. Like that was a whole like learning experience too in and of itself, besides just the whole historical component of it as well.
And also, I believe that was also the first time we really got to see a lot of your friends in person for the first time as well. So how was it finally getting to like oh my God, it's so good to finally see you, like getting to embrace seeing each other and like knowing like, wow, these are actual real people. Yeah,
so I mean, I had met Samira in 2019 in New York City, but it was only for like a day, and then she had to go home and I had to go home. But like this is actually where we got to actually work in person together. I mean, it was the first time I met DS in person too. Met our good friend Chris Riddle in person, Phil Lindsay. I finally got to meet Deanna, my girl. I finally got to meet a lot of my girls. Chelsea, Mickie, I hadn't seen in a while. I don't think I had seen her in like a year and a half at that point because of the whole pandemic and all that. It was good to see her again and also form new connections, like with a Gail Kim, like coming out of that weekend, like a Kylan King I got to see out of that. It was cool to like see people in person, like, oh my God, you're real. Like as stupid as that sounds, but like it's cool to like connect with people in person and keep building, because now I see people like I've seen people multiple times now since Empower. Like I saw people at Empower, then I saw them in Dallas, then I saw them in Nashville. So I mean, it's cool to like build those connections too in person. I mean, I don't get to travel a lot because of my shoot job, but the times that I do have definitely been worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, funny that you mentioned Kylan King, because I mean, another form of content you've been getting into lately is commentary in the world of pro wrestling, especially with CCW. Kylan King, currently CCW champion. I mean, how's that experience been like working with like Alyssa Marino and like getting to dive into that part of wrestling?
Thank God for Alyssa Marino, because I still, like, I think I've done it 5 or 6 times now. I still, even the last time, I was nervous as hell, like, feeling like I wanted to throw up. Before I went on, honestly. Thank God, like, she is very, like, I've had many questions for her. Thank God she has been very gracious with me. I'm also very honored to be able to work with somebody who's very experienced and very fucking good at their job, like an Alyssa Marino, who's also one who is great in professional wrestling as a whole, very multifaceted. She kind of run me through the ropes, and luckily it's remote, so we can do a little editing if need be, because it's via Zoom and all of that. But she's the one who really, like, I see how she structures things in her notes and see how she reaches out to talent to get background info on their moves and the matches and the psychology and the storylines. So I'm still very grasping that aspect of it. I still feel like I need to get over, like, my fright. I mean, luckily she has all the notes written out for me, but still it's getting over that fright of messing up and, like, being afraid, because I say this, but I am not good at public speaking. Like, I say that as I'm involved with this, but I literally put off my public speaking course requirements to the very last semester in college.
Wow.
So it's still a learning curve for me and getting comfortable. I think I'm more comfortable on camera now, but commentary is a whole other ball game because it's still kind of foreign to me. So I've been very grateful to kind of be under Alyssa Marino's wing, and I feel like I get better as we go on recording, because luckily she's the lead, and it's remote and it's not live and we can edit it, but I still definitely need a lot more reps in before I feel like completely comfortable. But it's been a really cool experience and, like, pushing myself out of my boundaries. Like, I've definitely pushed myself a lot, like I said earlier, like in-person correspondence I hadn't done before Empower last year. Just this past week I did my first ever live interview, with Maserati. So that was also an experience. Like, it's not edited, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been cool pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
So kind of going into, like, putting off the public speaking thing for so long, like, do you think it's just, like, a nervousness of, like, people, like, actually actively listening to what you had to say, or you thought maybe they wouldn't be interested, or, like, what do you think it was that kind of...
That's just been something I say that too, though, as I, like, did a talent show performance in, like, fourth grade. No, just, I always feel like I feel my chest swell up, and, like, I feel like people are staring at me, and, like, my voice, like, I literally shake. Like, even, like, on media calls, like, I've noticed that too. When I'm on media calls, I feel like I will swell up, because all the eyes are on me for some reason. I can't explain it. Like, public speaking, I have, like, never been good at, like, even, I feel like I'm good at it, like, words wise, if I can say the right words, but inside I feel like I'm dying, and, like, my chest swells up, and, like, I'm shaking, and my voice and all that. I just can't do it. Like, I feel like everybody's judging me, and, like, I'm not comfortable. I'm still not even comfortable, like, with my own body and my own skin and stuff like that. So I'm just like, everybody's judging me, I feel like. And then, I say that as I'm an on-screen personality, but it's still scary.
I mean, there's always going to be, like, that part of you just, like, unsure of what exactly you're doing, but, like, you come to think of just, like, the support that you've gotten over the last few years, and just, like, people actually really looking forward to what you have to say, and, like, letting you know, like, of the quality of the work that you're putting in. Does that help, like, ease a little bit of that timidness?
A little bit. I feel like it eases it a little bit when I know what I'm talking about. But even when you know what you're talking about, there's always, like, oh, I'm going to, like, slip up, or you're going to say the wrong thing, or you don't have your facts right. Because especially like, as a woman too, I feel like you're more scrutinized for not having the right thing, or you have to get everything out perfectly, because this is a man's sport, whatever. So I feel like there's more pressure to present yourself so perfectly, which I have never been able to do. So I feel like there's always that added pressure too, and also fear of judgment in general. Like, even if I know my stuff, I'm still, like, afraid people are gonna judge me or, like, scrutinize me.
Sure. So say, like, you're at your wit's end with something, you're just like, okay, I need to stop what I'm doing, I need to disconnect, I need to dive into something else, not even just, like, a comfort thing. Like, what do you think is one of the big things that helps you, like, when you need to take a break from whatever you're doing for work and just kind of recharge the gears, like, really make sure, like, I can get back to, like, a healthy spot where it's like, okay, I'm ready to approach this again, but, like, how do you, like, take a moment to, like, chill and diffuse.
Well, like I said earlier, I've been very fortunate too that I have great friends like yourself, like a Samira, like a Chris, like our good friend Emily J, etc. I've been very fortunate that I have a really good friend system when like other parts of my life are falling apart, which we won't get into. But honestly, like my friends have been like my rock. Like my friends are my family, to be honest with you. Like I would not like, I mean, I say this as I have my own psych degree, you know, like I'm good at like giving advice out to other people, but like when I can't even take my own advice sometimes, and it gets to be tough. So I've been really lucky that I've had a good friend support system. And also, like I was mentioning earlier, like like distracting myself from like with those comfort stuff, like gaming. Like I will watch that because it makes me happy, it makes me smile. Or I go on YouTube and watch like R-Truth funny moments, DX funny moments, like a good laugh.
Go to a concert.
Go to concerts too.
And text each other about wrestling while at said concert.
Yes, like we did at Dua Lipa. Like I said, ASMR too. That was one that like really calms me. Like there's a lot of triggers. They're called triggers that I'm like really into, that like really calm me, and I can just listen to those like as I'm watching something else. Like I have it in the background, or I can just listen to it straight up, and it really helps me. And taking my stress relievers too have been really helpful. But yeah, I think, and like comfort food, like I will eat a lot of ice cream, like I did last week, to be honest with you.
I mean, we all have vices.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no way around it. I mean, hell, I just had McDonald's before we started.
Yeah, I've been really lucky though. I like overall though that I have like a good friend support system, especially I think makes up for a lot of the absences in a lot of other aspects of my life.
Yeah, and I feel like now like that we're on like towards the other side of COVID, like having like more opportunities to get social, like going out for like a karaoke night or a bowling night, or just like something to like help like not think about like stuff, even if it's for a couple hours. So
it's really hard though to turn it off. Like I like at one point my screen time was like 12 to 14 hours, and it would have been higher had I not been sleeping. Like you get so wrapped up in it, even at my shoot job. Like I will literally be scrolling, and like because I miss, so you're gone for like 6 hours, you miss like a whole day's worth of news or content, and so I will be scrolling at my shoot job when I shouldn't be, and to keep up to date on it, or lurking when I shouldn't be, and I can't turn it off like almost ever. Yeah,
like it's not just something where you can just hit a button and it goes away.
No.
Hit the button. If you know, you know.
Yeah. It honestly takes its toll sometimes. So like I wish I could just deactivate for like a whole 2 days, but then I also know I'm gonna miss this, or like, you know, I want that social interaction too as well. But some days I just want to chuck my phone across the street, honestly.
Yeah. No, then like obviously like nothing is perfect, especially content creation. So like even like when you can't turn it off, like what do you think is something that you've learned over doing this for the last few years that you kind of wish you knew before you got into it?
Something that I've learned, especially, I mean, I've learned it before, but it's something like I've experienced very, very recently, is knowing your worth, especially when things don't pan out the way you think they will, or you think that you should be getting this, but somebody says no. It's like knowing your worth, and that's something that I think I really first realized in my first chat with Deonna Purrazzo, because it was just following her WWE release from NXT. I talked to her like 3 weeks later, I think, something like that, and she was talking about like advocating for herself, especially when she wasn't happy in there. You know, she had done all this work and pitched herself and invested in herself, but they just didn't see it. And so now look at what she's done otherwise. You know, she has branded herself so well and like has really pitched herself, and she now knows her worth and is very successful in Impact because she was given a chance too. But also like she was also one who not only advocated for herself, but she advocated for others too as well, who were in less prominent positions than she was. Well, like she was explaining to me, I think, granted, this was like 2.5 years ago, but she had an opportunity where she had already been in Ring of Honor, but then she put in a good word for somebody else to Ring of Honor management, and they got an opportunity because of that. But that also comes with networking and branding and all of that, and connecting with people, because you never know when somebody might, you know, give you a chance, like Mickie James did with me with Gaul. But also I've been now in an opportunity where it's weird, I've been now in that reverse opportunity where where Deanna was, where she's kind of worked her way up and has some say with other things, where she can where I've been able to like put in a good word or connect people, but I've built those relationships naturally, you know. You never know, like, you can help others, but you also have to help yourself too as well, and knowing your worth, which is something that I've experienced very, very recently, and I think I can't say I've finally come to terms with it, but I've definitely gotten a lot better in realizing that, yeah, you can be heartbroken with things, but that heartbreak also, like, fixes your vision, as I shared on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely important to always go into something which is like, just because it's a no now doesn't mean it has to be a permanent no.
Yeah.
So doing whatever you need to do to like pick yourself back up and then move forward, I think is definitely something that'll help anyone with their journey. So kind of going into like looking back on everything, if you could go back to, let's go back to right when you were starting to watch wrestling. Say we'll go 13 years ago. What would you say to Ella then about what you're doing now? And kind of like what you would tell her like to be on the lookout for.
You're gonna make me cry. I'm not gonna cry. We'll cut that out. You're gonna make me cry. So like that was also, like I said, during a time where I was just in a really dark place. Like from like 6th to 11th grade was not the fondest times for me. And like wrestling really became an escape for me. But if you would have told me that like I would have been friends with the woman who like is my biggest hero in life, I would have called you a liar. The things that she has done to like change my life is just crazy, and like she's put me in positions that she absolutely like didn't have to. It's kind of like, it's also like a mutual friendship though, you know, like I've helped her in ways, which is like giving wisdom to her is just crazy, but she's also giving wisdom to me. It's just crazy. Like I just wouldn't have believed it, you know, honestly. Like there was a point where my mom banned me from watching wrestling. But you know, I was still a fan of it on the down low, not, you know, but professional wrestling has just really changed my life, and I'm very grateful that I found it. You know, I think I'm not regretful of my psych degree. I feel like it's given me a lot of knowledge that I've used through my studies there, and like empathy and all of that, and learning more about people that I kind of utilize in my interviews. Yeah. Which I don't know if I have a style per se, but I definitely try to form like a deeper connection, which is why I think it also helps me in some of the things I do in wrestling with connecting with people and like into my interviewing format and stuff like that. So I would just say that like I'm grateful. Like you wouldn't believe what you're doing now, little like 11-year-old Ella, when I found it in the summer of 2009.
That is incredible. So we are getting towards the tail end of things, so I have one or two more questions. So before we get into my last question, the one I want to think is, what's going on now? What do you think is next? So what do you have going on that you're looking forward to, or what are some of the things that you're aiming to continue to do?
You know, I'm kind of branching out. I've been doing a lot in professional wrestling. I'm also taking chances on new opportunities right now, which means scaling back or leaving some of the stuff I was doing prior. Like even just the time of recording this, like I get to like work with Sean Ross Sapp on Fightful coming up for All Out predictions. Like that's something that I've been really manifesting for a while and branching out. And again, it goes back to the whole scale of forming genuine connections with people, both, personally and professionally. And honestly, I'm just hoping to be able to do this full time. I've said that before, but I have my shoot job subsidized, the financial aspect, but I really just want to be able to do more, travel more, have this be full time, like financially poised too as well. So coming up, I have that. We have Bound for Glory in October right now. I'm just planning on going as a fan. Who knows what might happen though? Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of at a point where I'm kind of like regrouping after these last few weeks where I wasn't in the best, I honestly wasn't in the best headspace after Nashville because of things happening. So I'm kind of in a regrouping phase right now and getting myself together. And I think I've done some steps. Like I said, there's been certain things that definitely left me heartbroken or feeling like a failure, but I feel like I've kind of beginning to bounce back and restore my confidence in that, and that there are people that believe in me, and I've had, like I said, a good support system, like yourself included, and kind of regrouping. And I don't know what a lot of the future holds. I obviously still continue with a lot of the stuff I'm doing, like CCW commentary, WrestleZone. I've been writing more regularly over the last couple months. That's been fun. That's been a new experience too as well. I'm getting to do more interviews, but I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't know, to be honest. I'm kind of like, a couple of things have ended, but I'm hoping to start up a couple of things as well.
Nice. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then my last question is for anyone that is looking to get their foot in the door when it comes to any form of content creation. What do you think is going to be a big piece of advice that you would have to share that's helped you along your way?
So this advice I've heard from Denise Salcedo, who's killing it, and also Chris Van Fleet. And I think it's make yourself known for something. Like Denise and I made an episode of Wrestling Gal earlier this year on like content creation and wrestling media, but like we had a whole like half-hour conversation after we went off the air, and one of the things she said to me was like, make yourself known for something. And I think that that's something I've been, unintentionally able to do, like with women's wrestling. Like I said, people have told me when they think of women's wrestling, like I'm one of the first people that they think of. And so finding your niche, or you can also be multifaceted, but making yourself known for something, whether it's interviewing or doing like retro reviews is something I've seen, like predictions, like crazy hot takes, like whatever you're passionate about, whether it's in wrestling or not, because there's so much in this world in content creation, like we were talking about earlier. Making yourself known for something and finding your niche and finding your passion, but you can also be multifaceted too. Like you don't also have to only just put yourself in one box. Like I am very into like Survivor as well. Like I've been doing more stuff with Survivor, but wrestling is kind of just taken over. You can be multifaceted too, but like making yourself known for something, whether that's your ability to have like HD quality, like you got the whole professional setup here, like crisp audio quality. Make yourself you're multifaceted, whether that's interviewing, editing, writing, and all of that. I feel like that's definitely something that I've definitely been striving to do.
Nice. You're definitely making a big name for yourself, so never shortchange the things that you're doing. There is a place for you, and you are definitely carving out a path for a lot of people behind you that are going to be wanting to do a lot of the similar things you've gotten to do. So definitely thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Where can everyone find you?
The easiest way to find me would be on Twitter at It's Ella J. If you go to the link tree in my bio, you can find the links to get merch, to Women's Wrestling Talk, SC Scoops, WrestleZone, all those fun projects, etc. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at a Wrestling Gal. Again, the link is in my bios there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on, Ella. It's been great talking to you, and I'm looking forward to whatever is coming up for you.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, Jose. I apologize again for my voice not being 100%.
Oh, no, you're fine. There's been who knows what kind of racket that's going to pick up here. But yeah, thank you guys for watching and listening to this episode of Content with Creation. Definitely let us know what feedback you have. Leave a comment down below. Make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing. Rate us on iTunes and on Spotify. You can find us at the Jose Can You See on Twitter, letters U and C. And definitely keep an eye out for anything in the link down below. If there's any updates before this goes live, you will be in the know. But yeah, thank you, Ella.